over the last month, and we'll continue next week with a few other meetings that we have yet to wrap up. But you know, the purpose of our meetings today is to make sure that when people do come to the polls on April 3rd, that they have the opportunity to make an informed vote. And that's all we're asking for, is that people have the information to hopefully make that informed vote and understand why we're doing the things we're doing at this point within our current fiscal year and moving forward, hopefully projecting out over the next 20 years. I'll let the handouts circulate, and I think most of them have made it around where they from start to finish. So the reason why the school district of Pullman is going to pursuing a referendum at this time, and it is a two-question referendum, and we'll get into why two-question coming up here shortly, but the reason why we're looking at a referendum at this point, for those of you that are not familiar with our building or may not have been back in our building in quite some time, the entry was built in 1975. A referendum connecting the two elementary and middle or high school was passed in 1999, and that debt is coming off of our books this coming year here in 2018. So the reason why we are pursuing a referendum at this time is there are some things that we need to have addressed, and we feel that this is an opportune time to do that because we are not going to be adding on to the existing debt, because that existing debt is currently coming off of our tax rolls. So that's why we're pursuing a referendum in the year of 2018. We're also hopeful that if the referendum's questions do pass, that interest rates, of course, are substantially low right now, and we would hope to take advantage of those opportunities as well. So that explains a little bit of why we're pursuing a referendum. I'll get into the two questions, and this process started already back in July of 2016. We had a facility study done throughout our entire building to identify some of the needs that we really need to address. And after that facility study was completed, we then asked our 7-member board to ask for 5 volunteers each, and they did that. They provided me some names of people that would be willing to serve on a committee, and I made sure that I did end up calling the people that they provided the names for. Some were able to do it based upon the commitment that they was going to be expected of them, and unfortunately others could not. So by the time we got done, anywhere from 20 to 25 members ended up serving on this committee over the course of a 10-month process that we went through. We thought it was important that every single municipality was also represented. So we have 7 municipalities that the school district of Pullman represents. You will see a member on that committee that represents every single municipality. So, and as we went through this process, the part that I guess I was the most proud of is that it was truly community-led. It was led by the citizens, and they kind of dictated which direction we wanted to go with this. And in October of last year, the school district sent out a survey, and I don't know if any of you filled that survey out when you received it. Hopefully you did. Our return rate was pretty strong. We had 27% return rate from our constituents, which may not appear like a lot, but in the world of surveys, anything over 20%, you're getting some valid results. We felt back, and we did that through a company called School Perceptions, which does that quite frequently for most of the school districts throughout the state. So when we got the survey results back and the committee looked at them, the community identified 4 top priorities that they said our school needed to address. And the top 4 priorities that they said we should address was our building infrastructure, upgrading our building security, upgrading the elementary and the middle school area, and the last priority was the STEAM or the tech ed area. And STEAM is an acronym, and for those of you that don't live in the worlds of education, we are acronym very heavy. STEAM stands for the science, technology, the engineering, the agricultural, and the arts, and the mathematics areas. So those were the top 4 priorities that our constituents said, yes, you need to address. They scored very, very high, and there were 2 others that did not score well. Those were the addition of a high school library and that of a community-wide weight room. And after hearing those results, the committee went back, redrafted some of their plans, and came forward after some lengthy discussions, bringing forth a 2-question referendum. And the reason why the committee went forward with a 2-question referendum to the board in December was because of the fact that people identified the top 4 priorities, but they also said they were willing to go anywhere from $9 to $12 million with a comfort level. That's what they said. So in order to do that, we said, well, we will go to our voters, and these address the first 3 priorities, and this addresses the second one. As you can see, when you add those 2 amounts together, you're exceeding that, and we felt that it was truly then up to our constituents to decide if these were your top 4 priorities, are the people going to be willing to support all 4 of them, and we felt that that was needed to put it in the hands of the voters on April 3rd. So that's how we got to 2 questions, really by listening to the community survey results that we received back. And I want to stop periodically to make sure that if your question comes up, or if you're thinking it, I can guarantee that someone else in the room probably is as well, but I wanted to make sure you understand before we proceeded on with each of the categories why we pursued a referendum now. The debt is coming off for this edition. Why the 2 questions based upon the top 4 priorities, and as well as what the survey said the threshold financially they would be willing to support. So before I go into each of the categories, I wanted to ask if there were any questions from the audience about the process that we used to get there. And like I said, it took them over, the meetings themselves lasted over 11 months and about 10 meetings by the time we got done with other members that you see on that committee in front of you. So that process I thought went very, very well. And obviously there are some members on this board that were part of that process, and hopefully they would say the process was a successful one too, at least working through the ideas and differences of people that brought different views to the table. So, any questions at this point? No? So the first area that we're going to be talking about, and they're numbered, not in sequential order of course, but we talk about infrastructure, ADA, life safety measures. When you see a number 3, and that basically surrounds the entire building structure, it's a dotted line that goes all the way across, all the way around, I should say, the entire building. Number 3, we're talking about upgrading our roof, particularly at the high school. That is something that is a need that we need to take care of. As I mentioned before, the elementary and the middle school area was built in 1975. There still are the original windows and the original doors on that building, so all of them we're looking to replace as well. We're also looking to replace all of the windows and doors at the current high school. For those that haven't been to Coleman High lately, they have a unique look to them. I think that's a safe way to say that. There's a plexiglass surface over the top of them with grids on them that look very, very unique. That probably have been there since the 1980s, I want to say, is when they've had that plexiglass look over the top of them with those grids. So we're also looking at replacing some of the plumbing underneath in the elementary area, and as well as this hallway, particularly in the high school that connects to the kitchen, is in some need of some attention as well. So when we talk about infrastructure and HVAC and those other factors that we're talking about, that's what we're talking about with this part here. The ADA also refers to handicap accessible toilets. So we'll be looking at upgrading the men's bathroom here on the lower level, upstairs levels as well, and then over at the elementary level making those ADA compliant at both the middle and the elementary levels. So that's what bucket, this is what the first column addresses within our building infrastructure needs that was identified by that committee, or by the survey results. So you have a question about that?
On the heating and refrigeration, as we would say.
Yep.
Is that going to mean that there is going to be air conditioning throughout the building?
Yeah, and believe it or not, Kathy, we're very fortunate right now. We do have air conditioning.
Only in the middle school, isn't it? Or did
Nope.
you put it in the high school?
No, it's in the high school. You may not recognize when you go to a gym, but it actually is even in the gym. You wouldn't recognize it some days in graduation, but it actually is throughout. So that is, we already have that. We're fortunate to have that because a lot of schools do not, particularly when you get to the upper floors. Some of those late school days in May or in early September, that can not be a great learning environment for kids, but we do have that in right now, so we're fortunate to have that. Any other questions about that first column? The second one, I'm gonna jump around a little bit, but number one addresses the secure entrances, and number two addresses the upgrades of the high school office and also the elementary and the middle school office. So number one, secure entrances, making sure that all visitors, of course, have to go through the offices, whether it be the elementary or the middle, or at the high school. All visitors would be funneled in after the start of the school day while school is in session into the main office area. With redoing that, number two ties in with that. In the high school office area would be expanded back a little bit to allow visitors to come in. That would be a slight addition off of our lobby, number one, to make that entrance and have all visitors come through and then check in through a secure system and then exit eventually into the interior of our building. The same would hold true at the elementary. All visitors would be buzzed in and then have to be required to check in into the main office and then out into where our student population is at. So all doors would be locked after 8 o'clock as well, and the only accessibility to our building would be through those main entrance doors throughout the day. So that's when we're talking about upgrading that area. Our nurses station would also be moved in the elementary middle school to the elementary middle school office. In the event that our nurse is gone, her current office resides over in this area, and in the event that our nurse is not in her room, we have oftentimes students coming here and she is not available, so we felt it was better to have them under supervision, particularly if they're sick, at all times. So when we talk about number one and two, they kind of combine themselves together. Our school counselor's office is moved back to here where the old superintendent's office is, for those that are familiar with our building, and that's where our school counselor for the high school is currently located. Renovate core classrooms and replacement of partition walls is number 5 on your map. You're going to see that in the elementary as well as the middle school areas. 1975, the building was built with what was an open concept, so there were no walls in the elementary when it was built. So currently we have partition walls in between there. Our teachers still don't mind that flexibility, but we're hoping to make this structure a little bit more soundproof in between each of these classrooms, because right now there is some orange paneling that separates them that is not real soundproof. But like I said, we did have a second grade teacher on the committee, and she felt very strongly about having the flexible spaces in the event that our class sizes require 2 sections or require 3 sections, and if they only require 2, having this open common space in between these classrooms was very important to still maintain. So we're looking at upgrading some of those partition walls to make them more acoustically soundproof. That's a challenge, but we still feel we need to address some of those things as well. Number 6 and 7 definitely go together, and currently number 7 is where our elementary gym is, and middle school gym, and as well as our cafeteria. Our cafeteria is actually this spot right here. Our middle school gym is here. Currently that was, should go back, it was built in 1975, of course. Back then, middle school sports were not real predominant, just starting to get its foothold with middle school basketball. There were no such things as girls sports, and of course nowadays we do have a lot of girls sports, and we have a lot of youth sports that go all the way down to our elementary level. So currently this is our basketball court length. It is 74 feet, regulation is 84, so it is 10 feet short of a regulation court. And it is about 3 feet narrower than what a regulation court is as well. So what we're looking at doing is making this what is currently our cafeteria and expanding the gym and making it a full-length regulation court. And it would probably be almost broken up into 3 different areas, because we still would have to find a place for our wrestling, of course, and for middle school, or middle school in particular, and also our basketball going on here. Number 6 is where Cougar Lobby is, as we refer to it in our building, but this would all become a commons and a cafeteria space, with the kitchen being moved back to here. And when people come for a sporting event or a community event, they would be filtered into a commons or a common area and then filtered into the gymnasium. So that's what we're looking at doing with number 6 and 7. That was identified with the committee. That was a lot of topic back and forth. Believe it or not, there was proposals to build even a brand new field house, but that got diminished within the committee. That didn't make it out of committee, so you know, those were some serious discussions that were had by those members that you see on that list there. So before I move on to some of the things happening at the high school, does anyone have any questions on this middle column of things that are there? Yes, sir.
You mentioned after 8 AM, all doors are locked. What
Yeah.
about before?
Well, obviously that's a challenge not only do we have, but every school has, right? Because you
I
need
mean,
your
are
students to.
all these other doors open?
Yeah, so our main doors that, let me clarify that. So our students still would be parking here. These main lobby doors would be open for them to access prior to school starting. Same with our bus pickup. We've talked about making sure that, of course, these lobby doors would be open, and more than likely, some of our students would also get there. But all the other exterior doors would be locked and only be accessible.
Like to the athletic room and in the back? I went to school in Pullman, in
Okay.
'68. But there was entrance through that locker rooms. Are they still in the back on the high school? That
So-
we could get to the.
Right here?
Yeah, we could get to the football field and that from there and,
So there are doors back here,
right,
but they're not typically open even now.
okay.
And our plan would be all doors would be locked, and the only way you would access them would be if staff had their fobs or whatever it would be to.
Or a piece
buzz.
of wood.
Well, we hope not. We don't want anyone lodging. in
That
the
has
building.
been done.
I won't deny or admit that that's ever happened at Coleman School District, but at the same time, that would be the hope that all of these doors would be locked and the main would be the main way in which students would access
Just
into
the front where the
Yes.
bus is, okay.
buses and where students would park their cars. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions on this bucket here?
Are the doors, you know, as you come through and they're open in the morning, is there gonna be a specific time that they close, and are they gonna be on timers, or do people have
They
to
would
go
all be
physically
on
lock them?
timers.
Okay.
Yeah, and we do have a lot of our doors actually on timers now. So, but that would be enhanced with the new doors as well, so all of those would be on timing systems.
I would assume there'd be, when those doors are open in the morning, the mass traffic coming in, a great deal of supervision.
Yeah, we
for
have
that.
teachers having supervision in the parking lot, we have teachers supervising the bus area, we have teachers supervising the drop-off area for our elementary, which has got covered up a little bit, but, so there is supervision and assigned supervision every week for our staff to be in specific areas prior to school and even after school. So, any other questions on that second column?
What are the times gonna be for when the doors will be unlocked and when they're gonna be shut?
I would anticipate they would be locked at roughly 8 o'clock, and they would not be back open again until the end of the school day at roughly 3:16.
So if you're late, you're gonna be forced to go and
Yeah,
lock the
check in,
office and,
yeah,
good.
just like it would be if you were late for your job.
No sneaking in.
So, so that's what we envision happening with this. The renovations at the high school, I talked about number 1 and number 2 already. Number 8, renovate and expand the high school cafeteria. So this is our current cafeteria here. Actually, the wall that is in between the high school office and the cafeteria would actually be eliminated, and this would all become very much an open space in here. We currently have our middle school students eat at a certain time, roughly right now 11:24 to, I should say 11:27 to noon, and they come through with about 150. They do eat in increments of about 10 minutes each. 7th grade gets 10 minutes, 6th grade gets 10 minutes, 8th grade gets 10 minutes, then they're filtered back out into the gym, because there's not a lot of space in between here for them to sit and actually just socialize. Our high school has roughly 200 students that come through the cafeteria in a half-hour increment. It is not uncommon, and they've been very good with it, but many of them do eat in other areas of the building, in the hallways and everywhere else. Obviously, we'd like to confine that into the cafeteria, but sometimes space is limited with there. So we're hoping that by knocking this area out and making this a slight addition, that this would actually allow for more commons. For those that have been in schools that have been built recently, there's been a big push for like cafe-style seating and high-top seating, a much more casual atmosphere within that area. But this would also open up for our sporting events, so everyone would come in, and basically the concessions area would be in the cafeteria now, and everyone would congregate here instead of our front lobby area where we currently have concessions on a table. So that's what this area is looking at doing. 9 ties with that, so the kitchen would be renovated as well. And then finally, number 10, for those who've ever been to a sporting event or a community event at Coleman High School, one of the larger issues we have is our bleachers. The first step, I think we measured it today, was a 14-inch step up. That's a hard step up to get in when you have mobility issues, and there are no hand railings, there are no half steps, and there are still spaces in between each of the areas that things continuously fall down through, whether it be your jacket, your cell phone, and all other miscellaneous items that still fall through onto the gym floor. And those are original bleachers from 1960. They've been welded many, many times, but we are looking to replace those as well to make those much more accessible for our spectators, so they can actually get up away from the action when they don't want to be hit with a ball or anything else. So that takes care of the first question that you would see on the ballot, and that's exactly how the question would be worded, and you would have the choice to vote yes or no for question number 1. So before I proceed on to question 2, I want to make sure everyone understands what question 1 is truly impacting. If there are any questions about that.
I'm just curious what the little gray square is there in the middle of, by the cafeteria there,
Help me
between
out.
the 8 and the 1, that little,
Oh, that's actually our
like
current
utility?
elevator shaft, and that we're not going to move because of the cost that would be associated with moving that. And if you look over, just to the right of that, Tammy, it actually comes up into this area. And that actually, we have to build a wall outside of that elevator shaft door, because right now it exits into a classroom, and we need to make sure that that has accessibility to the hallway at all times. So that's what that small part is there with that elevator shaft. So, any other questions about the drawing or any of the things that go from question 1? Question 2, as we said, was another high priority, but we felt we would make it a standalone question. It is referred to STEAM, and one of the handouts that we are distributing is explaining why we are pursuing the second question. I want to make sure that I think I have enough. In that second question, refers to the STEAM area and the tech ed. And the purpose of us pursuing this is actually to try to meet the demands within our current workforce data development that has been accumulated by NWTC. And when you look on that, it shows both Marinette and O'Connell County on both sides. And Marinette County, the projected largest growth you start to see is in the manufacturing area or the tech ed area. O'Connell County, it's not far behind either. So our job as a school district is to prepare our students to make sure that we can meet the demands of the workforce that's actually here. Because ultimately, we're very proud of our school, we're very proud of our students, and the ultimate goal is to make sure that when they have children one day, that we want them to come back and continue having success at Coleman School District. And we feel that this plan can hopefully do that. But when you look at that data, it definitely identifies that manufacturing in the tech ed area is one of the needs that we truly need to make sure that we are addressing with our students. So the tech ed area is predominantly found at the high school. For those of you that have been into our building, not a lot has changed when you talk about tech ed. This is our greenhouse here, that's staying put. This is our ag room. That would also get renovated a tad bit in regards to some of the lab space that we put in there. This is our current metals shop, and the metals, we have our welding room, we have our CNC machine here, and we have our auto lift here, and this is the woods room. So a lot of that equipment is still original, and we would be looking at upgrading a lot of that equipment. Also, we'd take our art room, turn that into a drafting lab, and this would become a fabrication lab as well, where there'd be 3D printing robotics, things of that nature that you would start to see within that area. So when we talk about upgrading the tech ed area, we currently have one tech ed teacher. The goal would be to add another tech ed teacher. So we ask them what operational expenses, what may some of this cost from an operation standpoint. That is one area that we would look to invest in, would be adding a tech ed teacher to assist our current teacher with a lot of the things that would be required in this area. So when we talk about tech ed, that's some of the biggest changes we are talking about. When we talk about relocating the art room, it gets shifted up to this east corner of our building. And then the other area is the science labs. Currently this is our science lab and this is our science classrooms. So we have two science classrooms that both share a lab. That becomes a challenge for scheduling labs. So we're looking at taking this lab and actually putting it in and making two classrooms much larger that have labs inside of them. So they could actually do the experiments and all of their lab write-ups right within their own classroom instead of having to fight for lab space. The current lab, the equipment would be transferred over and this would become a classroom that was relocated from the other part of the building. So this would become a science area. Our math classrooms would get shifted down, and our English classrooms would actually get shifted down because of this hallway that has to be created because of that elevator shaft that enters up into this classroom currently. So the other change, number 15, by code, stairwells would have to be added to exit the exterior of the building immediately, and they have to exit directly out. So we'd have to add new stairwells by code when those get put in. So that stairwell would actually exit the building here, and this stairwell would exit the building on the lower half down here. So by code, because of what we're doing, currently our stairwells exit and students have to either turn right or left in order to exit the building, and in the event of emergency, they should be able to go down the stairs and exit immediately out of the building. So that's what question 2 is addressing, and that's why we're addressing it to meet the workforce demands within our both Marinette and O'Connell counties. So, any questions on that one? So now for the real question. All right, financial impact, right? So we probably should know what potential impact this is going to have. These two questions. If you don't have enough of it. And like I said with question 1, this is exactly how question 2 will read on the ballot, and you will see a yes or a no underneath it. And as a voter, you'll have the right to vote yes or no on both question 1 and question 2. So, I'm currently passing around a bar graph that has two sides on it. And I want to be very clear with this because I want to hopefully be transparent as, so when you leave here, you fully understand what the implications are, because I think we don't want to have people confused. So I think the best chart, or the best side to look at is this chart. And remember we said at the beginning that in 1999, the school district had the voters approve a referendum for this part here. Back then, in 1999, it was $3.5 million to build this addition. As I said, that debt is currently coming off, and people over the last 18 and a half years have paid $1.16 per thousand on their taxes for that, on that what they paid over the last 18 and a half years on that. So that $1.16 is actually from the 1999 debt moving forward, and it will be paid off in the year of 1819. So when we look at this question, people have been accustomed to paying that $1.16 for that $3.5 million debt. When we take question 1, we're saying that question 1, if it was approved, would be an additional 47 cents on per thousand on what people were paying over the last 18 years. So the total impact is $1.63 per thousand, but people have been accustomed to paying for the debt of that addition. So you take the $1.16 plus the 47, and it would be an additional 47 cents per thousand on what you've been currently paying. So on a $100,000 home on the back side of that, breaks it down on the value of your property. So if question one passed, it would be an additional $47 per year on a $100,000 home on what you're currently paying now for the referendum debt. So I want to be clear with that statement. Okay, question?
So if this referendum would not be approved, okay,
Yes.
would taxpayers still be paying the,
$1.16?
yes,
No, that would come off.
okay.
And then we would be at zero for that, for any referendum debt. We would have no referendum debt at that time. Does that answer that question?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Any other ones? Because I want to be, not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet, okay. Any other questions? So if question one passed, and I think that's why I want to be as clear as I can with that, it looks at this question at for $10,850,000, and you're still looking at that and going, well, wait a second, that says 47 cents per thousand. Question two says 2,980,000 for 50 cents per thousand. Remember, this is 47 cents per thousand on what you are currently paying now. In addition to what you are currently paying now, the $1.16 plus the 47 for a total of $1.63 impact for question one passing. Okay? If question two were to also pass, then it would be an additional 50 cents per thousand, or $50 a year on a $100,000 home if that question passed. So when you add the two together, on a $100,000 piece of property, it would be an additional $97 a year on what you are currently paying now. And the life of that loan is for 20 years. So I just want to be clear with those two. So now, and some of you may have more questions.
Doug, the financial institutions, will they guarantee those rates over the 20 years?
So we estimated that at a 4%, maybe you're talking about the interest rates, I'm assuming. So we estimated that on a conservative level at a 4% interest rate. We're hoping that if both referendum questions pass, it would not be that high, but we tried to be conservative that because we don't know where interest rates will fall by the time, if we were fortunate enough to have those pass. But once we do that, we would of course lock in that interest rate loan if it was favorable, of course, for us to do that. But at this point, if they stay where they're at, we would obviously pursue locking them in at a very favorable rate.
And what was the interest rate on the previous loan?
So that's a very good question. It was substantially higher, and I have that back in my office, Kathy, but we did refinance that loan roughly about 4 or 5 years ago. Would you say that was about?
It might have been even a little bit longer than that.
When interest rates started to come down substantially, we refinanced to make sure that that interest rate could be guaranteed at that time too, so. Other questions about the financial implications,
The
Dave?
question that was posed to me that I didn't have an answer for, and might as well ask it now, is why don't we just continue the $1.16 bond issue? I didn't have a good answer, except that, well, your mortgage ran out, so now you gotta refinance.
Yeah, we would,
But what would your answer be to that
so why don't we
question?
just continue the $1.16? Because
Let's just stay the $1.16, and that'll get us more money. It's like, somehow they say that would,
Well, we'd still have to go to our voters to have proved
Right.
that question, no matter what the dollar amount was. The $1.16, whether that would mean we were gonna get roughly, if $1.63 is getting you $10 million, what would $1.16 get you? Probably right around, I don't have, doing
Right,
quick math in my head, but roughly $7 million maybe is what it would get you. So, sure, you could, that would have been an option, but the committee decided that at this point, these were some of the needs that we wanted to address, and we wanted to see if we could move forward with that, because as you can see, when you identify 4 top priorities, it's a challenge to make sure you can fit financially within even the 9 to 12, and where would that have fell when you say, well, we're gonna look for $7 million, and what are our priorities gonna be now? So, so we would have to go out on referendum no matter what, whether it be for the rate of $1.16 to keep it consistent, or anything above that too, or below that.
Yeah.
so.
It's not like your house like this person's thinking, I think it was how, I just refinanced my house for $150,000 or whatever,
No,
and I'll get it for another 20 years, but
no, the
That's
school
not the way
districts
it
do
works
not
in
have that
this-
You have
authority
to
to do
pass a
that.
referendum to get this,
Yeah.
to get this.
To go above and beyond the revenue limit of where we are at, so. Any other questions financially that I can hopefully address before you leave here, because I truly want you to understand what the tax implications would
We
be
getting help from the state, or
in terms of,
as far as financing this besides the taxpayers, or
no, so
no
we.
federal, or?
So we get money from the state, yes, but those are usually for our operational expenses. The state does not contribute to the capital expenditures that would be involved in a project of this size, so.
What about mandates? The security is the one I'm addressing here. If they're mandating it, are they gonna come up with some money
Well,
for
I
those
would-
mandates?
We would hope that would be the case, and
That's what I'm saying, you know,
that
on the
would be looked at
security,
in the
how much,
biannual budget that they would have to, look at and see if they would be willing to allocate money towards that, so. He just,
In the plan.
the governor just allocated some more money for rural schools, this past, week. I think yesterday he signed them into law, the sparsity aid. Then that's why Governor Walker was actually at our school, 2 months ago already, I wanna say.
it's never advertised.
So, to do the sparsity aid and to do, to exceed the, low revenue limit ceiling that has been in place since 1993.
Isn't that true that he's running for reelection?
He
Never
might be.
mind, I
I
didn't ask.
don't, try to stay out of that political
Yes,
realm.
I understand.
But
So-
that aid's only operational though, it's nothing
Pardon?
to do with, that aid is only operational, not
Yeah,
capital.
that's usually our operational budget, yes. So, any other questions about the financial implications? I truly want you to understand what that impact can be. So the first question would be $47 additional to what you're currently paying, and the second question would be an additional $50 to what you're paying. So, some of the questions that have been posed to me by other members of municipalities or service organizations, what if question 1 passes, and question 2 doesn't? Ryan Wendt is our board president, so obviously the board would be the one responsible for making that decision, but from what we have heard from our board members, and I don't wanna speak ever on behalf of 7 other individuals, but if question 1 passed and 2 did not, more than likely, the board would still move forward with question 1. I think that's a fairly strong consensus that we heard on our board. And what happens if question 2 passes and question 1 doesn't pass? We would not, the board more than likely would not move forward with anything at that time, and reevaluate. And of course, the question has been posed, what if both questions fail? Then we would have to go back to our voters and truly ask the question, why did it fail? And can you please give us some reasons of what you felt were not appropriate with this solution that was brought up by 20 members of our community? How can we redraft this? How can we make this something that you truly feel can be an investment for our children's future? So, the timeline was another question that has been posed quite frequently. If these questions did pass on April 3rd, it would take the architects roughly 5 to 6 months to draft the plans. We would be potentially start doing some of the reconstruction around next, or I should say this December to early January of next year. And the completion date they are projecting would be by the start of school in September of 2020. So that is what they are telling us if things stay on track of where this completion would come into play. So we do have one more open house coming up on March 27th from 4 to 6 p.m. If anyone would like to come in and take a tour of our school. If that time or date does not work, we'll be more than happy to accommodate your needs at the district office to try to give you a tour. Our website has a lot of valuable information, and we are trying to do our best to get information out to our constituents, because like I said, our most important function is to ensure that our voters truly know when they go to the polls what does question 1 entail and what does question 2 entail, and what are the implications for our students and for you as a taxpayer. So I think I've covered most of everything that I need to cover, and I'm hopefully willing to answer more questions if you have them about our referendum coming up on April 3rd for the school district of Pullman.
On behalf of the board, while people are still thinking, I want to thank you for coming this evening. And
Oh, absolutely.
excellent presentation once again, and thank you for coming again to Yvette. And I know this cuts away from your family time or social time, but it's important to get the word out. And I'm sitting here as the town chairman tonight, so my position is our board cannot take a position, but when I step away from this position, I have been trying to be as active as possible to be with the Friends of the Coleman School District. And I would ask everyone to sort of be an ambassador to get people to vote. If you don't want to tell them how to vote, tell them, vote, and tell them why you want to vote. And humorously, use the Gene Chapman method. If you're going to vote yes, it's April 3rd. If you're going to vote no, it's April 4th. That's getting. So thanks again for.
No, thank you for having me, and does anyone have any other questions before I do leave? Because I would, like I said, if you think of something afterwards, feel free to call the school and ask to talk to myself or Yvette to hopefully answer any of your questions. If we don't know them, we'll definitely research them to make sure that you have an answer too, so.
If I'm reading this right, it's levied over 20 years?
It is, and that is the maximum that a school district can take out a loan for, is a 20-year maximum, so.
And I don't think I'm slighting anybody, but Ryan and Josh and Dave and I were a part of that group that met for that year, and I would agree that you guys did a very professional job preparing for the referendum.
And thank you. And like I said, the work of the committee was to be commended, because they put a lot of time and thought into this whole process to try to improve our school district for generations to come, hopefully. So thank you.